Welcome to Maximizing Your Website to Grow Giving. I'm Joe Park, CEO of Horizon Stewardship, and I'm delighted to introduce today's presenter, Richard Rogers. Richard is an SVP with Horizon Stewardship and the author of E-Giving Guide for Every Church, which is published by Abington Press and widely available, including on Amazon.
Thanks, Joe. Just really delighted to get to be a part of the webinar today. We want to first be clear just about what we're talking about today, and that is what is recurring e-giving. Recurring e-giving is electronic giving that just happens without any work on the church's part to make that happen over and over again. And so the difference between recurring giving and reoccurring giving is the amount of effort that it takes on the part of the church for that to happen. So a reoccurring gift is when somebody gives and then they do something and choose to give again, and then later on they choose to give again. If a gift is recurring, then that means that it happens. The donor chooses the amount and frequency for gifts automatically sent to your church, and then that gift continues to happen, whether it's monthly or whether it's weekly or every 2 weeks or whatever that recurring time frame has been set up to do. And so if a gift does not occur without any repetitive action from the donor, then it is not yet recurring. Doesn't mean that it can't be transitioned into that, but at least it's not at this point. So the financial benefits of recurring giving are that e-givers give 33% more than traditional givers. In fact, nonprofit recurring donors give 42% more, we found in a study by the Network for Good. There are other benefits besides just financial benefits to e-giving. Vanco found out in a study that they did that 43% of electronic givers attend Bible study versus 35% of traditional givers. And 26% of e-givers attend Sunday school versus just 18% of traditional givers. Now, what I want to do in our time together today is get really, really focused. I know many of you already have a graphic similar to this that may say 3 ways to give or 4 ways to give or 5 ways to give that you've been using for some time as a part of your worship experience or in a place on your web page. I've seen graphics like this in churches now for a few years that they put up on the screen and remind people that there are lots of different ways that they can support their church. In person obviously has been a challenge these last 6 months, but there are certainly other ways to give besides just what we do in person. And so that's kind of been the point these last few years of graphics like these that again, most of you have probably been using for some time. But today, I want to really focus in on just your church's homepage and your church's giving page. So I mean, just really specifically, we're going to get our conversation down into what actually happens online. And when I talk about your church's homepage, what I mean there is the very first impression that churches get. When they put your church's web address in their browser, your homepage is the very first thing that they see. Here's an example of that, both whether it's on a laptop or in a mobile platform. What's the very first thing that someone sees when they come to your church's homepage? The thing that I'd like to remind you or make sure that you remember is you only get one chance to make a first impression. Your homepage clearly states your focus and priority, and whether you do that intentionally or not, it is sending a very clear message. And so what you choose to put there when people first come to your site is really going to impact user engagement going forward, and that really is the whole point. And so it's really vital for us to look at our homepage, the design of the homepage, and the messaging that's there, and realize that it is likely either compelling people to dive in deeper, to come inside, or that it's repelling them from doing that. It's very rarely going to be a neutral experience for someone. And again, what we want them to do is take a deeper dive with us. User engagement is the whole point. So when I'm talking about user engagement, what do I mean by that? Well, we live in an image-based culture, and so it's very important for us to use images um, as a greater part of the messaging than just words. Obviously, you're not going to open a website that's just all words, but you will find some out there, some church websites particularly, that just have an abundance of wording right on their homepage, and it just is overwhelming right off the bat to the user. And more importantly, I think if we can find an image to begin to craft the message that we're trying to share and the way that we're trying to draw them in, that image will often do a better job, and we need to be really thoughtful about what that image is like. Then you've also got questions about navigation. Are we going to have an approach of scrolling or clicking? And when you think back, not too many years ago, the way we navigated websites was with our mouse. We pointed and clicked, and we used clicks to get from one page to the next, from one screen to the next menu item, whatever it may be. And now many, if not most websites are moving to a different method of navigation that's really more about scrolling. And the reason why is because most people are engaging the internet on a mobile device. And because on a mobile device, it's difficult to point and click, it's much easier to scroll with your thumb. Well, that's also now driven a lot of our laptop and desktop web pages to also having more of a scrolling feel to them. You also have to make decisions about the use of menus and how many of them that you're going to use. It's going to be absolutely essential that you have at least one giving button right on your home page so that it's easy for people to find. Here's a good example, I believe, of a church here where I live. A good friend of mine is the pastor here. And you can see that when you first go to their website, you'll see the point, kind of their main thing, that the main message that they want you to hear is that at Russellville First, they want to be about making disciples, loving God, loving others. You can kind of tell that this has a scrolling approach because there's content toward the bottom of the page that makes you feel like you want to kind of slide and scroll down so that you can see more of what's there. But they've also got the use of menus there across the top and a really prominent giving button. Other things to remember is that less is more. You do not have to have a ton of content on your homepage. It is, again, if we overwhelm people with words and messaging, then they may decide that they have had enough of that. And so we want to just do essential messaging that gets the point, the hook, so to speak. There are also realities called above the fold. Above the fold came, that phrase actually came from the newspaper industry back when we consumed our news and information primarily through newspapers. They put the leading story, the most important information, not only on the front page, but they put it above the fold because they knew that's what people would see first. And so that phrase has carried itself into today, even though we're on digital platforms, in that there are still above the fold realities that you deal with. And that is that about 57% of the content that people spend time viewing is actually in the first screenful of information that you show. And so anytime that you're wanting people to scroll, just remember about 57% of what they're willing to consume and spend time looking at is in the first screenful. And the first two screenfuls represent 74% of the content that people take in and interact with. And so it is very important that if you decide to have scrolling content, that people are going to do some content scanning. They're probably not going to read every word, but they are going to look most at what you prioritize near the top of your page. You can make that scrolling experience go much deeper than that, but the reality of it is, the further down you get, then the less likely it is that people are going to see that. So be mindful of how you prioritize, even though you may or may not be intending to. If it's closer to the top, then it's going to get more attention. And obviously, mobile responsiveness is no longer optional. People are consuming over half of all content on the internet on a mobile device, and it's vital that that interaction that they have is easy for them to do. In fact, the percentage of online donations made using a mobile device in 2019 grew all the way to 26%. So, I mean, literally in 5 short years, we went from less than 10%, and this is across all nonprofits. So, I mean, this is a huge amount of online donations. In just 5 years, we went from less than 10% to over a fourth of all donations online are made on a mobile device. So it is absolutely essential that your experience on a phone or on a tablet is absolutely comparable to what somebody would experience on their laptop. We call that optimizing your site for mobile usage. And that means that experience is just as seamless. If people have to shrink and find and scan and move stuff around to try to find it, they're just not going to stay with you. And so if you happen to have a website that is not optimized for mobile use, be sure and talk to your tech person, because in this day and age, there's no reason why that shouldn't be an easy transition for you, but it is a very important one. Now, your church's giving page, this is the first thing a donor sees when they click on a giving button. Unfortunately, on many church websites, it's not actually always a giving page. Oftentimes, churches use this, the first look that a donor gets, to do discipleship and Christian formation, Christian education content. And I just don't think that's a very good idea. If somebody has clicked that they want to give now, the shortest distance between that and them making a gift is what we want them to do. I do believe there's absolutely appropriate ways for us to communicate the discipleship content that we want to, and the ways that people can give, and other information that's helpful in their formation and in helping them give in a variety of different ways. But when somebody clicks that they want to give now, they've already made that decision, and we want to facilitate that in as easy a way as we can, with as little friction in that process as we can. So there are some really important factors there when it comes to your church's giving page. And I'll go over these in a little greater detail, but the ones that I want to address today are branding, ease of use, donor options, default settings, helps, expressing gratitude, and then testing your system. So let's look at each of those. So branding is about maintaining a similar brand, regardless of when they navigate around your site. And so you want to maintain a similar brand imaging feature as your website homepage. In other words, your logo and name need to be familiar to the donor, and they need to have presence on both your homepage, and now when they take that click and go to your giving page, you want to make sure that there's something consistent there. You want to use consistent colors. You don't want to feel like that there's this vast departure into some unknown place. You want design styles to be similar. They don't have to obviously look exactly alike, but you do want logo, name, color, design styles all to have some similarity to your homepage, because your brand equals trust with your donors. And when we send them to a site that then looks like we've passed them off to somebody else to handle something for us, then they don't have the same confidence in whoever that is that they don't even know that's handling that transaction for us. they don't have the same confidence and trust with them that they do with us. So every step that we can take feasibly to be able to give them a consistent experience as they make that transition from homepage to donation landing page or giving page, then that helps us. Here's a really, really good example. And to be honest, there aren't many churches who do it as well as some of the nonprofits. So I just want to set the bar pretty high here, and then know that you will find some churches who also do a fantastic job. But St. Jude certainly is somebody who understands how to resource well. And so something that maybe I thought I'd share with you what they're doing so that you can just see just how clear it is, the efforts that they're making. So here's St. Jude. Here's a screen capture of their homepage. Now, if you navigate to their giving page with either of the red Donate Now buttons that obviously stand out on their homepage, this is where it takes you. There's not an education. There's no continued reinforcement of mission other than the line there under the monthly or one-time option that says you are joining a special group of monthly donors committed to saving children with cancer and other life-threatening diseases. I mean, what a great statement of affirmation of involvement in the mission and connection to their cause. So I like that. But if you look at the page, you see their logo, their name, very familiar. It just feels like a very familiar transition for the donor. Now, when it comes to ease of use, we've got some things that we need to pay attention to here, and that is that speed matters. People are not going to be patient for very long if it takes them a long time to navigate from either one page to the next or one step to the next. And so you do need to make sure that your website operates efficiently and that we can help them get to the point of what they're wanting to accomplish or what they're trying to find as quickly as we can. And remember, there are implications of that in a mobile format. You simply can't get as much information on most cell phone screens as you can on a laptop. And so you want to really pay attention as you develop your site what the mobile interaction is. It's always going to be easier to navigate on a laptop or desktop. So build the site around the mobile experience, and then know that your laptop or your desktop experience should even be easier than that. And then minimize the required steps for making a gift. You may not have to have every bit of information you would ever like to have on a donor just to enable them to make a gift. And so you want to don't make them take 10 steps if they can take 6. Don't make them take 6 if you can get the information that you need in 5. Every step that you take, every bit of the experience that takes longer for them, again, adds friction, resistance, or barriers to what we're trying to do, to what they're trying to do. We want to ensure that we provide an option for a guest user or one-time donor. It may very well be that most of the people who come to make a gift to your church are already a member or already a donor. They may already have an account set up. Most people will probably want to set up an account and register what they're doing. But you do want to give people a way to test the water, especially if they're a guest or somebody who may not be on the radar or who may not want to be on the radar with their gift, and give them an opportunity to make that gift as a guest user or one-time donor. We also know that donors like options. And so there are lots of different ways on our giving page for us to acknowledge that they like options and to give them some options without it hijacking what we're trying to do or what our priorities are. So let's talk about some of those options. We want to offer multiple ways to give from the site. We want to give people, you might choose any of these different areas. ACH enrollment, there may be an easy way. You can set up an online form for them to make an ACH enrollment. You may want them to have options to give with a debit or credit card, or both, or one or the other. You may want to use a payment aggregator like PayPal or Apple Pay, Amazon Pay. You also may want to give them a way to just use an e-check. See more and more of that as well. You may also want to consider predetermined gift options, whether it's in check boxes or whether it's in a drop-down menu, giving them some predetermined, some common gift options, may simplify the process for them. If you've got basic data from your church software program, then you're going to know what common gift amounts are anyway. But you may want to do that. You'll notice on the St. Jude website that they even highlighted their most common gift for a new donor that they did, just to kind of draw attention to that gift level as maybe a first gift. You should also use check boxes, or again, a drop-down menu for gift frequency options. Now, I recognize that not all of our providers that we use for electronic giving have the same format. Some may allow you to format some check boxes. Other may allow you to just use a little drop-down menu. But regardless, you want to give them gift frequency options. It's really not about what's convenient for the church. We want to be as donor-centric as we can. We want to be mindful of what makes for a great experience for the donor. And so my recommendation would be that you give them some different options, whether it's monthly and weekly, or one time, or first and 15th, or twice a month, whatever you want to do there. But I do think giving them options is something that you'll want to consider. Now, I also believe, I will say that when you do that it's okay for you to prioritize what you prefer. So you can put them in the order that you prefer. You don't necessarily have to put them in chronological order. Let me back up a slide. In fact, I would never list one-time donations first. I would always assume that we want them to make a recurring gift. And so I would list the other options first, and one-time as another option. And then you want to prioritize your fund options with your drop-down menu. Most churches have more than one fund that they have people giving to. And so whether it's our budget, our ministry plan that we're wanting people to support, or maybe it's a mission effort that's going on right now, or an ongoing effort, outreach, evangelism. We may have a capital campaign that we're working through right now. And so there could be others. Unfortunately, some churches have 20, 30, 40 designated funds that they're trying to manage. What I would say is, regardless of what your situation is and how many different funds that you want to show, keep it simple and try to prioritize it as much as you can top down. In other words, if what's normal for you is that you want the most support to go to your annual ministry plan, your regular budget giving, then I would list that first. I wouldn't bury it where they've got to go find it. Okay. If you have something come up on a certain weekend, you've got a big outreach or evangelism event, and there's an opportunity for people to make a gift on this weekend, or we're taking up a love offering for this mission effort, then you may, for that weekend or for some short period of time, bump that option up to the top again, so that it's easiest for folks to find it. But then don't forget about it. Go back and reorganize these so that your priorities are clearly being communicated there, so that you're just managing it and being intentional, and not just kind of letting stuff happen willy-nilly however it happens. Joe, you like that willy-nilly term there I threw in on them. Default settings. Default settings make this gift recurring. We want to assume that people want to make a recurring gift. I believe that everybody ought to be everybody ought to have the option of making a one-time gift, but I want to always default to assume that they want to make a recurring gift. And so I'm always going to have that highlighted, even if it's not already selected. And I'm certainly going to make them confirm on, as a backup, they're going to have to confirm that they're choosing to make a recurring gift. We're not going to sneak that up on them, but we're always going to highlight that and make that as a default setting. If it were me, when it comes to really optimizing recurring giving, as well as balancing that with the cost to the church, because most online gifts carry a per transaction fee in addition to a volume cost, then that per transaction fee means that if I've got donors who give monthly and donors that give weekly, even if they give the same amount, it's going to cost a little bit more for weekly donors. The cost to the church is going to be a little bit higher for weekly givers than it is for monthly givers. And so while I'm perfectly delighted for people to give either monthly or weekly, my default setting would be a gift frequency of monthly, because if I have fees that I pay per transaction, then I'm making that per transaction fee happen less often. And then another default setting would probably be ACH and bank draft. The bottom line is these are just lower cost transactions. Anytime that you're using credit and debit cards, there are higher costs associated with those than ACH or bank draft. Oftentimes your ACH and bank draft are 1.5% or less. And with credit and debit cards, a lot of times they're 2 to 3% is what you're paying for that, for those gifts. And so I would probably use a default setting of ACH and bank draft most of the time. And then for my credit and debit card transactions, I would cover the processing fees. Again, 2 to 3% of those is an easy way. I would invite them to cover the processing fees for credit and debit. If you invite them, oftentimes people will choose to cover that 2 or 3% themselves. And so if they're willing to take that on, and again, most of the time they will, then great. A little bit of explanation and most folks would do it. If you are doing ACH and bank draft, which is only 1% or less, sometimes half or less, then it's probably not as a compelling reason to ask them if they would consider covering the processing fees. Now, other helps that you'll want to include would be an embedded video or a link with some simple how-to instructions. I've seen some pastors do an incredible job with this, especially during the last 6 months of the pandemic, as they're trying to really onboard and move people towards online giving. We've got samples on the Giving 365 site of pastors who are just doing a really good job of helping with those how-to instructions. And then also just a simple statement for assistance, please contact. Give them an actual name and phone number of who to contact in case they need help right then. What we want to do is, in the moment, if we have somebody who's trying to make that gift, we want to be able to make that as easy for them as we can. And so if we can offer a way to do that and the name of the person that they'll be able to reach, I think that familiarity and trust is a good thing. Most people probably won't use it, but in the event that they bump into a challenge, we can help them navigate it. So I recommend that you do that. And then we want to customize our automated gift confirmation email. Every electronic gift that I have ever made comes with some type of automated gift confirmation response through an email. And if you look at the two samples that I've got on the screen, they really kind of just look like a receipt. They don't really look like something that's come from my church. They are expressing gratitude, or at least one of them does. And so, I mean, that's great. Thank you for your donation. Thank you again for your donation. So I think expressing gratitude is good. Oh, here we go at the top of the other one. Thank you. Your donation has been processed. But I think we can improve this so much more besides just expressing gratitude and acknowledging that what they've done has actually worked, that the transaction has happened. Man, we've got an opportunity to personalize this as much as possible. You can see one of these has my name there. It captured that from the transaction that I did. It captured it, and they could have very easily just given one sentence that says, "Hey, Richard, thank you so much for your generosity. And here's how that connects to the impact of what's going on in our church." So, at least one sentence, maybe two or three, about the impact that that gift is making. And remember, we're not thanking the gift, we're thanking the generosity of the giver. And so I think when we transition from this feeling transactional into something relational, then I think it reinforces the relationship that exists there. And from our church, I think we should expect that with maybe a nonprofit that we support, maybe not. But here, I think we have a real unique opportunity to significantly make a difference in the relational aspect of it and to reinforce our mission. And so let's don't miss that opportunity. And then test your system. Always test before you take your page live. Always test before you launch new features, and then periodically test to ensure the desired donor experience across different devices and web browsers. If you use a Mac, or if you use a PC, or if you use Safari or Chrome or Internet Explorer or Firefox, depending on the device and depending on the browser, people may experience your site differently. And so you just want to make sure that you've tested that. And even if it is different, that what is there is what you want it to be. And then just some final tips. Set up a reminder system or notifications if the provider that you use doesn't have something in their system that automatically tells you about ending dates on recurring gifts, which some of them do. If they don't, then you need to make sure whoever is managing your system for you, whoever's posting contributions, or however your system is set up, make sure that you know about any ending dates that exist on recurring gifts. It would be very frustrating for somebody to stop giving, for the pastor to think that they have quit giving, and really all that happened is their expiration date on their credit card got to its end date and their gift stopped coming because they hadn't gotten the okay or they hadn't updated their date, their expiration date on their credit card. And so anything that you can do that lets you know about when recurring gifts expire, or if a donation has stopped, then make sure that you have those systems in place. And then, assuming for you, like for me, that tech isn't your thing, then find or hire someone to help you. This is vitally important. You absolutely cannot ignore it. You can't afford to wait. We believe that you ought to be getting 30, 40, 50% or more of your giving through electronic gifts. And so our encouragement to you is make as many of them recurring and effortless as you can, and continue to drive people into these channels and use your website to help you do that. Don't just tell people, provide them the tools to make it simple.